Hello, my Brony and Pegasister friends. I am Inkrose, and today I'll be telling you part 2 of my Twilight's parents story. Check the description for a link to the first part. Let's get started in 3, 2, 1. The next few months were grand times for every student in the Magic Academy. Graduation was fast approaching for the senior students, and everyone was preparing for it. Twilight Velvet in particular was feeling very stressed at even the slightest mention of graduation. After all, once she was graduated, she would be thrust into the world of grown-up responsibilities. As much as she loved the thought of having her own job, she would also have a ton of responsibility weighing down on her shoulders. Thankfully, however, she always had a way to relieve her stress about the future. Twilight Velvet and Nightlight frequently spent time together. Be it during lunch, in the library, or out on a date, Twilight Velvet always felt at home when talking to Nightlight. She felt so relaxed just talking or being around him. They had decided to become Mare Friend and Colt Friend a while ago. When they had first announced this, the whole school had been in an excited uproar. After all, the couple the whole school had been rooting for was finally coming true before their very eyes. Sundance Glimmer took the credit, of course. When the day of graduation finally arrived, Twilight Velvet stood silently in her dorm room's bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She adjusted her graduation cap and brushed off her gown. To add the finishing touch to her outfit, she donned her favorite pearl necklace. She was ready. But she didn't feel ready. A small knock rapped upon the door. She trotted out of the bathroom and opened it. "Hello there," Nightlight said, standing proudly in the doorway. He was there to walk her to the ceremony. Twilight Velvet smiled. Now she felt ready. Trumpets blared their grand music as Princess Celestia flapped her massive white wings, lowering herself onto the huge ceremony stage. She smiled and nodded her head as the crowd of proud parents and little siblings cheered. Celestia began her opening speech, talking about how proud she was of the students of her magical academy. She then began listing off the names of the students one by one, each of the students rising and getting their diploma from Celestia when they were called. Twilight Velvet and Nightlight sat next to one another in the student seating area. They held hooves, nervously waiting for their names to be called. Twilight Velvet noticed about 3/4 of the way through that neither of their names had been called yet, despite N names already having passed. Why had Nightlight not been called up yet? Pretty soon, every student except Nightlight and Twilight Velvet had been given their diploma. Velvet looked around, confused. What was going... "Twilight, Velvet, and Nightlight," Celestia said, beckoning the two ponies forward onto the stage. Blushing, Velvet followed Nightlight onto the stage, standing before the princess. "I am very, very proud of both of you. You are both the highest-ranking students in this academy, and both of you are extremely adept at magic. It is my pleasure to grant you to the highest honor this school can bestow, that of the Phoenix." Celestia's pet Philomena swooped down from the heavens, dropping with its talons 2 scrolls. The scrolls landed directly before the 2 astonished ponies, who promptly picked them up with their magic and opened them. Within the scrolls lay small feather-shaped badges, alight with a small magical flame in the center. The scroll itself was a highly decorated diploma. Celestia motioned the 2 to fasten the badges on their graduation gowns. The 2 did so, proud smiles adorning their faces. The Phoenix Award was only granted to the best of the best, the students who really caught the eye of the princess. Truly, today was the greatest day in Twilight Velvet and Nightlight's lives. As the ponies both turned to face the cheering crowd, Celestia tapped Nightlight on the shoulder. Velvet watched as Celestia gave Nightlight a small gilded box. He grinned as the princess gave him a wink. Next, he turned to Twilight Velvet, his eyes looking deep into hers. What was going on? Velvet blushed as Nightlight kneeled before her. He used his magic to open the small box. Within were bits and pieces of metal and gems. Twilight Velvet gasped as Nightlight used his magic to lift all of the bits out of the box. Magic pulsed around the metal and gems, bending the metal into intricate shapes and inlaying the jewels in lovely patterns. When the bright magic had faded, before Twilight Velvet floated an absolutely beautiful ring. Tears filled Velvet's eyes. The crowd gasped. "Twilight Velvet?" Nightlight said. Silence. Yes?" said Velvet hesitantly. "Do you love me?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Twilight's mouth trembled, and tears fell down her cheeks. "Yes," she said, smiling. "And would you be willing to take my hoof in marriage?" Nightlight asked. his warm gaze lighting up Velvet's soul. "Yes, yes, yes," she cried, taking the ring in her own magic and lunging forward, embracing Nightlight in the biggest hug she could muster. Nightlight slid the ring atop Velvet's horn. The crowd roared. Celestia beamed. It really was the best day ever, Velvet thought. The couple got married a few months after the graduation. The wedding was grand and yet small. Both sides of the family attended, proud to see their star student marry another star student. Nightlight and Twilight Velvet, after honeymooning in Manhattan, mostly for the giant library there, bought a 2-story house. They promptly filled one of the top floor's rooms with books of all kinds. The couple began their life together doing commission work for various ponies in Canterlot. Nightlight crafted various things such as custom furniture, jewelry, and book covers. Twilight Velvet was commissioned to write stories and perform them at many different events. Once they had saved enough money, the two opened a store in the crafting district of Canterlot, which they named Nightlight Bookbinding House. There, the two ponies teamed up to write and bind the best books in Canterlot. Their store was very popular amongst the Canterlot elite. It was at this time that Twilight Velvet first discovered she was with child. She and Nightlight were overjoyed at the news, hurriedly buying as many books about foal care as they could. They studied as much as possible, learning about every little thing they would need to know about raising a foal of their own. The day finally came when their first child was born. He was a little colt they named Shining Armor, since they wanted him to grow up to be a defender of the weak, a guardian. Life in the home of the couple was busier than ever. Not only did they have a business to run, but a beautiful newborn colt to take care of too. However, as busy as Nightlight and Twilight Velvet were, they were extremely glad to have such a wonderful gift of life that was all their own. After a few years, Shining Armor grew old enough to go to magic kindergarten. When attending there, he became very interested in shield magic. One day, when he came home from school, he trotted up to his parents wearing a proud expression on his face. "Look what I learned today," he proclaimed, his horn aglow. A magic pinkish bubble formed around one of the books sitting on a table. "Wow! Is that shield magic, Shiny?" asked Twilight Velvet, bewildered. "Yup," Shining said, beaming. "Just try to break it. Bet you can't." Nightlight grinned. "Let's put it to the test, shall we?" Nightlight took up a small hammer from his tool chest. He lightly tapped the shield. It stayed perfectly intact. He hit it harder and harder and harder. Still, it would not break. "Huh," Nightlight said. "That's surprising." Next, he took out a larger hammer, striking the bubble over and over with varying degrees of force. It refused to even dent. "How in the world?" Twilight Velvet said, both parents looking at their son in wonder. Suddenly, a dazzling light shone from Shining's flank. A shield with 3 blue stars appeared. Their firstborn's cutie mark was finally here. Shining Armor steadily grew better and better at protection magic as his schooling continued. Though he lacked in other magical fields, his skill with levitation and shield magic were unparalleled. When he was around 8, Shining Armor came home to find his mother and father in tears. He gasped, running over to them in shock. What's wrong?" he asked urgently. His parents turned towards him, grins adorning their faces. "Shiny, nothing is wrong. We're just very happy," Nightlight said. "Shiny, you're going to have a sister," cried Twilight Velvet. The coming months were even more busy than ever. While his parents worked on setting up a room for the soon-to-be nooncomer to the home, Shining worked harder than ever on his magical skills. He wanted to protect his baby sister in any way possible. He was very excited for her to be born, and often asked his mother when she would be coming. When the day finally came, Shining was unfortunately made to stay at home with a family friend as a babysitter, while his father and mother were taken to the hospital. He waited impatiently, pacing the floor over and over. Eventually, his dad arrived to take Shining to the hospital to see the baby. As soon as he stepped into the hospital room where his mother rested, he carefully made his way towards the foal resting in his mother's hooves. "Hello, little baby," he said, grinning at the light purple foal. She had a pretty dark purple mane with various shades of pink streaked through it. "What's her name, Mommy?" "Twilight Sparkle," said Velvet, stroking her daughter's head. "Both you and her are going to be best friends, I know it." She gave a tired smile. Both Shining Armor and Twilight Sparkle grew up in a happy home together. They played games, read books, flew kites, and practiced magic together. They became so close, Twilight called Shining her BBBFF, Big Brother Best Friend Forever. He was her only friend as she grew up, as the little filly was too wrapped up in books and studying to socialize with anybody else. Eventually, though, Shining Armor had to leave the home. He had finally gotten into his dream job, being a part of the Royal Guard, and would have to move out of the place. Even though they would see each other sometimes, and the parents were very proud of their son, the family couldn't help being very somber the day he left. Twilight, more alone than ever, began reading more than ever. She had certainly inherited her parents' love of reading and study. However, there was one problem that she couldn't quite get over. She was not doing well in magic at all. Her mother and father were amazingly proficient at magic, and her brother was quickly learning amazing things with his special talent. But Twilight was stuck. No matter how hard she tried, she could only muster brief sputters of magic. She wanted to be like the rest of her family so very badly. She devoted her life to magical study, reading as much as she could on the subject. However, breakthrough never happened. She felt like a plugged dam, her magical flow blocked by something preventing her from using its full potential. She explained her concerns to her parents, who gladly decided to help her. They suggested she apply to the same school they had attended, Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns. She gladly accepted, and so her parents began working on training Twilight Sparkle to face any test the school would give her in order to let her enroll. The day came when Twilight would be judged by the school's administrators. She was extremely nervous, and so were Nightlight and Twilight Velvet. The administrators gave her the task to hatch a dragon egg. It seemed simple enough, but Twilight struggled to get even a spark of magic to escape from her horn. What was going on? It was then that they heard it. A huge boom echoed across the sky, beautiful rainbows dancing across the heavens. As Twilight felt the magical force sweep over her, she felt the plug that was keeping her magic at bay seem to pop right off, letting loose a torrent of powerful magic. She couldn't control it. She cried out as she inadvertently made the egg hatch and the dragon within grow 3 stories tall. Her parents turned into potted plants, and the administrators floating in midair. Princess Celestia walked in and put a hoof on Twilight's shoulder. She immediately calmed down, the magic subsiding. Twilight Velvet and Nightlight turned back into ponies, the dragon turned back into being tiny, and the administrators were set back upon the floor. Twilight Velvet and Nightlight watched in amazement as their daughter was enrolled into the school by Princess Celestia herself, as the princess's personal protege. Not only that, but their daughter now had a cutie mark representing her special talent of magic. The 2 parents were unbelievably proud of their daughter. Their hard work and love had paid off. Who knows what she would accomplish in the future? Her destiny was looking bright indeed. The end. Also check out the YouTube channels of some of my awesome patrons.